Welcome to Shift, where we get together and have conversations around how do we get out of our comfort zone, how do we just get over our own BS to reach to where we want to go in life. My name is Elena Agaragimova. I'm your host for this conversation, and with me today is Fernanda, who I'm really excited to have on this podcast. She has an interesting story. She's currently based actually in Portugal, but prior to that, she actually grew up in South Africa, speaking in a multicultural home thanks to her Argentinian and Portuguese parents. And after completing her postgraduate degree in public health and spending a number of years working with NGOs in Africa, she relocated to Portugal, where she began her journey into self-improvement and changing her approach to life. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome, Fernanda.
Hi, Elena. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited about this chat.
All right, so let's just dive right in. So tell me about a time when you had a big change in your life.
So I would say definitely, just before deciding to move to Portugal, well, maybe a little before that, probably about three and a half years ago. From the outside, it looked like I had this perfect life. I had a wonderful job. I had a wonderful partner. I had, beautiful home. Pretty much everything looked incredible. But deep down, there were just certain things that weren't aligning with me. I didn't feel the satisfaction that I really felt that I needed to, which confused me in the beginning because I eventually sort of boiled it down to me just being difficult or unreasonable and maybe just spoiled. But as it turned out, it wasn't any of that, and we'll get to that further in the conversation. Got engaged, actually got quite a lovely engagement in Dubai, funnily enough, with a guy that I had been with for 12 years. I mean, I'd been with him for 12 years, but had known him since we had been children. He'd been a friend of the family. So somebody that really was not only my romantic partner, but a friend. So it just felt safe. It felt right. Everybody liked him. What went wrong? What could go wrong? Started planning this wonderful wedding, and that's it. Kind of dived into the wedding, got married, and I'll never forget kind of sitting there before getting married thinking, there's just something that doesn't feel right. Maybe it's just the nerves, maybe, who knows, maybe it's just those pre-wedding jitters, and kind of wanting to really speak about it openly to my friends and to my family, and wanting to say, guys, I really do. I love this guy very much. He's a great guy, but I just somehow this doesn't feel right. But there was just such an expectation, and so many people were coming. And my grandmother, bless her shame, she's passed. She was so proud that her granddaughter was getting married and bought the dress. The pressure was just unreal, that I thought, oh my gosh, I can't cancel this. I'm just gonna go in and do this, and then things are just gonna get better. Surely that's how it's gonna happen.
Yeah. It's super interesting, actually, that you mentioned it, because having grown up in a very patriarchal Russian society, like if you're not married by the age of 25, you're an old maid. Goodbye. You are. That's it. Like your life is done. So talking about pressure,
exactly that. Yeah, and also, and not that people necessarily mean to put the pressure on you, but it's like when you're getting married, when you're going to have kids, when it's like, well, maybe I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't, and it just didn't seem to be the right answer, particularly coming from a Latin family where, the fact that I was already living with this guy and not being married was already a no-no.
Big flag, red flag.
Not good. So I would say that was definitely the precursor to me realizing that the way that I was measuring my life's success, my life's happiness wasn't the right way to measure it. Mm-hmm. So got married, beautiful wedding. It was a great party. Everybody had a fantastic time. And I'm not even joking. It was less than a year down the line that I was, by the way, at this stage, I was in Tanzania, in East Africa, that I realized I was not happy. And to the point that I felt nervous. I was anxious. I almost felt as if I was losing my mind. Mm-hmm. Everything like it was just a culmination of everything. And I think it had a lot to do as well with the nature of work that I was in, working with NGOs. It was always very impact-driven projects, focused on grassroots level issues, predominantly women and children. And I loved the work, and it had some phenomenal rewards. But after spending pretty much my whole career in this field, I never really considered how it was chipping away at me, at my resilience, and that I was struggling to sort of change my mindset away from it. And that's kind of all I would see was the problems and how are we going to fix it, and never actually consider, hold on, before you can fix anything and actually be effective in anything that you do, like, where are you? When last did you actually take score of where you were in your life? So it kind of got to my last project in Dar es Salaam, and I realized, this project is coming to an end. My former husband, he was working all the time as well. So we were almost like ships passing through the night. We were very polite to each other, like, hey,
Great roommates.
we were fantastic roommates. It's like incredible. I could talk to him about absolutely anything, like, how does this outfit look like? Honestly, like, amazing. But quite evidently there was just something, there was something wrong. And
so what was it like? What was it the hardest part, you would say, about all of this? Like, what was the hardest part of you making that decision and say, you know what, I'm just gonna...
Having to admit to myself, having to acknowledge failure, on some level, that I had not succeeded in this. With all the good intentions that I was going to be a statistic, like one in however many people get divorced, that I was going to be part of that, and that I failed, but realizing it wasn't, it didn't work out. It does not necessarily a failure. A failure would have been staying in a marriage, having children in a marriage, being desperately unhappy, affecting your children, and potentially affecting their mental health, that they actually end up with psychological issues. That would have really been poor life choice and failing. But it was that pride. I felt like, oh my God, my ego is going to be so bruised. And what are people going to say? And what are people going to, like, what are they going to do? As if it really mattered. Like, and that's when I realized, well, tell her that it's not about what people think and say. Like, I'm the one living this. Nobody, like, everyone's kind of looking in, but they're not living my life. And I need to make a change. And it was really as not simple, but me being, I sometimes tend to have the tact of a bull in a china shop, because I can sort of sit and be quiet for a certain time. And eventually saying, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm checking out. I need to. And it really, that is what happened. And packing up and going back to South Africa, but knowing that I was going to go back for a very brief time, and realizing that part of what I needed to do was actually leave Africa and experience a completely different environment. Africa is a beautiful continent, is an incredibly diverse place, but has its own, for all the beauty it has a lot of ugly sides to it as well. And that also affects the way you think. It actually it affects the chemistry of your head. And I needed something, for lack of a better word, something that was a bit easier on my emotional and mental state, that didn't require this continuous, how am I going to get around this? How am I going to do this? That it just, where I was just in itself a good base and a good space to be in.
And I mean, I can totally relate to the part of you feel like a failure, right? So, and it's difficult to be in it. I mean, actually, it sounds like we have similar stories. So my first husband was, oh God, that sounds so bad. I'm like, my first husband. How many more to go? Just kidding. But my first husband, we were friends from college, actually. So we known each other for 7 years before we got married. And very quickly into the marriage, we're like, maybe better friends than we are husband and wife. No harm. It's okay. We're on good terms. He's a great guy. But that was also the difficult part, is the feeling like you failed. But now that, and also that feeling of just, I mean, personally, I think I've hid my divorce for like as long as I could from people. Like, I don't want to talk about it, but looking back at your experience now, like, how do you feel looking back at it now?
I think I look back at the experience now, and I only wish I had been brave enough to have actually faced the feelings that were so evidently in front of me. But I suppose, you could have, should have, would have, and everybody in hindsight has that 2020 vision. But I think looking back, I think a lot about, my father, for example, my father sadly has passed away, but, it's not that there weren't people trying to speak to me about it, but, understanding a mother and a father trying to tell their child, sweetheart, this is maybe not, like, think about this. We really like him. He's a great guy, but maybe not for you. I wish that I had been a little bit more open to the suggestions, and not felt attacked, because the moment they kind of tried to open up that conversation, it would be, defenses up, everything is fine, like, back off, like, absolutely everything is fine, Everything is perfect, so, just mind your own business. And looking back, I wish I had the presence of mind and the maturity, really, to really just listen to people who knew better and know better than what I do. And respect that they weren't doing it to make me feel any worse or any better, but they were doing it because it came from a place of love and concern, and because ultimately all they want and ever wanted was the best for me and for me to be happy. And, remembering that, and like I said, my father passed away. I've been very blessed in that regard, that I've had these fantastic parents, and my father in particular, he got sick. He had a very, very sudden illness, and between, his illness and him passing, it was incredibly quickly, and, it was 5 months, really. It just took us all by surprise. And I'm sure that he would, if he could listen to me speak now, he'd be really proud, because that was one of the biggest concerns for him, is that I wouldn't allow myself the time to think before responding impulsively. We had conversations before he died. I actually sat down and I said to him, Papi, I need you to tell me, like, how is this going to be without you? Because he was always kind of my fallback guy, like, oh gosh, I've made a huge mess or whatever, talk me through it. And thinking back then and thinking about it now, I realize that everybody has their model that they like to apply to their lives, and I think it's important to have some model, because it will kind of highlight your values and your beliefs and everything. But I think it's also important to always remember that things change, situations change, your environment changes, and it doesn't mean that you fundamentally as a person are expected to be different or are going to be different, but your thought processes are going to change and evolve. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong if it might be a little off color. At the end of the day, it has to be something that works for you, to ensure that you are able to actually, before being successful in any forum or any area, be successful for yourself, like who you are, like what you stand for. And I think that's the biggest thing. When I look back, I liked who I was. I didn't like what I was standing for. I felt that there wasn't this cohesiveness that was necessary in order for me to become whole. And I just wish that if I could have changed anything, it would have been listen to your parents more.
Golden advice. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It comes with time. It's almost like, until the I don't know, circuits in our brains align at a certain age or after certain experiences, do we then appreciate everything that our parents tell us. So definitely makes sense. So I'm curious, because usually when people talk about change or getting out of their comfort zone, what usually stops them is they're like, oh, they don't know how to kind of like, what are the steps? What is the process that looks like? How do you actually do how do you put yourself out of a comfort zone? Whether you're, I don't know, getting a divorce, changing relationships, changing countries, changing a job, whatever it is. And I'm curious of how much of the decision process that you went through was based on just intuition and that impulse and saying, this is just not right and I'm going to do it, I don't have a clear plan? Or did you actually have a plan and you're like, no, I'm going to do it because of X, Y, and Z, and this is the step-by-step? Like, how does that look like for you?
So this for me was definitely a decision that was motivated by my intuition, without a doubt. I had no plan. What the plan I had was I need to leave. I need a change of environment. So I intuitively knew that having no plan, because I have been called a little bit of a control freak because I like to have my little boxes and have everything tidily put in them and compartmentalized. I knew that was not working for me and that I actually needed to follow my intuition, because I realized had I probably done that before, I wouldn't be in the situation where I needed to make such a big move. So intuitively, I did. I packed a bag. I had no idea. I knew I wanted to be in Lisbon. I knew that I needed a change of everything. So obviously jumping onto a plane and going to a different country, no job, nowhere to live, I'm going to figure it out, as if you've just finished university and are going out into the big world again and sort of trying to find your place and make your mark. And it's exactly what I did. Arrived and sort of, you do. I didn't even consider job prospects. Like nothing. It was like, well, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Right now. And I'll tell you why, because it wasn't of paramount importance. That's not why I left. I didn't leave to find a job and to earn euros. I left because I needed to change. I actually needed to break myself down, to rebuild myself, to actually re-step those steps, that I'd made so long ago, because I sometimes think that people forget how difficult and how exciting and how nerve-wracking those experiences that we have, earlier in our lives are, and how important they are in shaping us and the people that we become. And the biggest lessons I've ever learned in my life have always been in that space where you have no idea what's going to come. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know whether you're going to fail, whether you're going to succeed, but it's that feeling of excitement that there's opportunity to either fail, there's opportunity to succeed. And for me, intuitively, I knew that is what I needed in order to start this journey of self-improvement, to be able to look at myself and say, you've messed up, but you know what, you're a good egg. You're okay. And that's really what drove the decision.
It sounds like, you really have to be able to trust yourself. And this is what I noticed as well when we talk about, again, any sort of that change and getting out of your comfort zone. You really have to have that belief that, like, whatever it is, you're going to make it. And I think it all starts with that, because once you start looking at it from a lens of, this is exciting, let's look at it as an opportunity and I can do this, you start to be solution focused, right? So you start to say, okay, I'm doing this. This is happening. I trust myself. I can do this, whatever it is. Let me figure it out. So it's almost like that perspective shift. And this is what usually stops us when we're talking about getting out of that comfort zone, is at the end of the day, it's like, you just have to be able to trust yourself. And of course it depends on, the situation, but that's what it comes down to, is that ability to just trust yourself and not knowing all the answers and realizing that there's uncertainty, but that's the exciting part, in my opinion. But yeah.
But 100%, it's trusting yourself, and also just accepting that you're going to make a mistake. It's not going to be easy. It might be easier for you than for others, but it could also be really hard. But in that, you will be better off for it. It will, I believe in perseverance, and I believe in that, tenacity is something that I feel I've learned to further develop, and it's that resilience, and as you said, not to kind of repeat, but it is trusting yourself and knowing that if things really go badly, it'll be okay. It might take some time, but it's going to be fine.
Absolutely. And would you change anything about that decision, or like, what advice would you give to that younger version of yourself, I guess, that is, facing this situation? What would you say? Would you change anything?
I wouldn't change my decision. I think any steps to avoid, because it's traumatic to make such a big decision. It's not, yay, here I go. I mean, for all the happiness, there was a lot of sadness and a lot of tears and a lot of frustrations. And I think anybody listening and who finds themselves in a situation like this, my suggestion is be bold, be brave, allow yourself the compassion and the vulnerability to speak freely and openly to your friends, to your partner, to your family. Anger does dissipate. Yes, it's probably going to upset, for you not to take the step to do what you feel is best for you is because you're afraid of people's reactions. You're afraid that people are going to judge you. You're afraid to disappoint. There's probably going to be that level of that, but with time, it will get better. And before you can please anybody, you need to be happy with yourself. And if you are not in that state that you are happy and confident with who you are not going to be any use to anybody. And that much I know, because I lived that life where, my grandmother thinks I'm perfect. My fiance thinks I'm wonderful. Everybody thinks I'm grand. I'm not too happy, but provided we keep up with the pretense, what's the worst that could happen? Well,
That's a beautiful way to end this, actually. So that's a beautiful way to wrap up. So just be true to yourself at the end of the day and trust that things will work out. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you so much for having this chat and sharing.
Thanks, Elena.
Thanks.